We're getting into late November, and I hope you still have some tags left. Incredible time to be in the woods. I would argue that late November I like more than early October, for example. Then you get into a quote October lull, which is really just a lot of times just overpressured deer. They change really quick when people start getting in the woods and hunting them, especially older bucks. That's more middle October. When you get into late November, though, I love it because we still get into some second rut opportunity, but bucks are recovering and they need to feed. Really important. So for me, it creates some more intense opportunity than even early to mid-October. Unfortunately, a lot of people plan their hunting around the opener, middle of October, and then of course the rut, gun seasons. And so you get into this time frame of the latter half of November, and people have either exercised their days off, they've really put a priority on more of the early season, and they're missing out on some of the best days of the year, maybe outside of the rut. They're really missing out. And if you're not going, you're missing out on some good stuff. It's just, I think people, if you hunt like we do throughout the entire season, multiple states too, you just start to realize, man, when it gets into this time of year, there's a lot of opportunity. I remember one of my best bucks in Wisconsin was shot the last day of gun season with my bow. And so that would be sometime in late November, early December, whenever that is, that time frame is, right around there. A great opportunity because, again, that buck was going towards a food source. I was still 350 yards away from the food source. He was coming out of a bedding area, going to food, a long ways away, but it creates opportunity for you. And I'd urge you not to miss it. And maybe even, next year, look at saving some time from early October, mid-October, and push that back to this time of year. Really start hunting maybe end of October, rut time, and then get your gun season stuff in, and then hunt late November. Really focusing more on that. But bottom line is, you get into late November, and I have to apologize because it is over. The rut is over when you get into the latter half. Now, for some of you, whether it's Kansas to Tennessee, over to West Virginia, maybe even up to New Jersey's up in that way, it kind of curves up towards the northeast. That rutting timeline, it might be November 25th, November 27th, November 23rd, even Southern Ohio. Shot a really nice buck the Monday before Thanksgiving one year, whatever date that was. Dylan, was that 2016 or 17? 16 or 17, one of those down there, yeah. But bottom line is, there was still some rutting activity, but that was really, literally I was hunting across the river from Kentucky. So southeast Ohio, really southern extreme. And there is that opportunity, but at some point in this latter portion of November, especially for us up in the upper Midwest, when you get into even southeast Minnesota, southwest Wisconsin, it's over. And it's over because bucks are in recovery mode. There will be even some does that might come into heat. And think about those bucks. They can't rut nonstop for 4 weeks, 5 weeks. In fact, because the rut is shorter and more intense up to the north, they rut really hard. They lose a lot of body weight. Temperatures dictate that they lose a lot of body weight. It's getting colder. They're really pushing, really driving for a short period of time, and then they just recover. And so they're losing 20, 25% of their body weight, whatever it is. And you can even see it in their stomachs that aren't hanging down anymore. You can tell they've lost, just looking at them, that they've lost body weight. Muscles are showing more in their shoulder areas. They've built up muscle, but then they're losing body fat all over the place, their hindquarters, everything. And so when it gets that time of year, they have to put the feed bag on. And that's what creates opportunity for you. I love focusing on food this time of year. So it doesn't matter even if you still have a few days of rut left. We have a few days of rut left here, and it is November 17th today. And these are the last days of our primary rut. We had one of our 6-year-olds junior. Last night he was all over the property, and then we saw him at 11:30 today. And he went back and forth hundreds of yards at a time, up and down 200-300 feet in elevation, one side, back to another, and then he was back again, and now we caught him in the middle. So it's pretty crazy. And he's one that doesn't go by a lot of cameras. he gets to places we don't even know how he gets there sometimes. He just knows he gets there because he avoids a lot of cameras. He doesn't travel where other deer travel. He's a 6-year-old. He makes his own set of rules. But bottom line is he's going to focus on food. He has to. It doesn't matter what he's been doing. It doesn't matter if we still have a couple days of the rut left. He's got to hit some food. He can't just keep running nonstop. So I like focusing on afternoon food sources. A lot of times this time of year, really focusing on purely afternoon. And that's important because if you have the potential of a morning hunt, but it's over a guaranteed afternoon sit where you know he's coming to this food source every afternoon, and you go in there in the morning, and even if you're 100 yards off to the side and you spook him going in, well, he's not going to hit that afternoon food source, even though he's been doing it every day. You just buggered it up in the morning, he's not going to be hitting it in the afternoon. So you really want to focus on that afternoon food set. And what you're really looking at is this time of year, they really consolidate their moving. And I try to show this where you could have a large food source here, and you might have bedding in here, bedding, something like that. You might have another major food source over here. Maybe the wood line goes like this. And when they're rutting, he'll come out of a bedding area and he'll cruise. Especially if that wind's coming this way, he can cruise. He can cruise the outside of all this brush, check it 150 yards at a time, and see if there's does in there, if they're receptive. That's his cruising pattern. However, when it's this time of year and he's going to food, he goes from bedding to food to the afternoon, goes from bedding to food, bedding down here, they'll go to food. Then at night, who knows where they go? They're all over the place at night. That's where they express their 3-mile home range. 3-mile home range doesn't mean they're doing that all day long. It means they're doing that at night, 95% of that range. And during the day, especially this time of year, and you can extend this to August, September, June, July, October, middle of October, at some point you can tell when the rut's on because they'll start expressing this parallel movement to field edge and food sources. But this time of year, they're going right from bedding to food, and then in the morning, they have all that giant window. They could be anywhere up in this range, but then they're locking back and they're going in that pattern to where they go from food to bedding in the morning. So they're just locking back and taking those traditional routes, and you need to capitalize on those. And so instead of looking at your favorite rut routes and cruising routes where they're paralleling and moving big distance, you saw a mature buck 500 yards over this way, he was 700 yards over here, you're getting him on multiple cameras or you're seeing him in person. Really at this time of year, when that rut is over, they're winding it down to simply 2 things, bedding and food, and then at night, who knows where they go. Rest assured though, especially for us up in the upper Midwest, you guys down in the south, your rut is a little bit later, but for us, we get our second rut sooner. So by the time we get into end of November, first part of December, I'm talking the last few days of November, then we're getting that second rut where those fawns start to come into estrus, missed does start to come into estrus. There's not a lot. This isn't like the south where you can get rut, month later rut, month later rut, month later rut. Because if our fawns are born too early in the spring, they're in snow and they die. If they're born too late into the summer, they're too small going into the fall and they die. So that rut window really tightens up, and those missed fawns of the year, missed does, maybe they're only 15% of the rut, maybe 20%, maybe 10. In fact, some states look at it like it's all the same. They just tabulate, take an average, and we'll just call it November 18th, when really the average might have been November 8th. And because they're taking into account 15-20% of those does that get bred in early December and early January, it really skews the actual primary if you're just looking at it as one rut. But when you look at and understand there's multiple ruts during the year, it gives you the opportunity to fast forward from intense lockdown period, end of October, early November around here. For you in Kansas, that might be more middle of December. You're looking at, we're up here. And then when you get down those southern areas that I mentioned, whether it's Kansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, where you have more of a traditional rut, not like Georgia, Florida, where you have multiple ruts over a 3 or 4 month period, then you're looking at a week to 2 weeks after our upper Midwest time. So if I was going to go hunt the second rut in Ohio, for example, it'd probably be in that southern portion where I've been, it'd probably be more like I go down for a weekend that might center around the 10th of December. Into the 15th of December, the 8th of December, not November 29th, like we would start focusing on around here. So Big difference in the timing, but the second rut is just around the corner. And that's when we flip back to hunting morning bedding areas, waiting for them to come back because they're exercising a little bit more movement during the day, or waiting for them, or during the night. And then we're waiting for those deer to come back to those bedding areas. We're getting in there before them. Maybe I'm hunting and it's frigid cold, really, really bad cold, and I'm going into a stand of oaks or a small clear cut that I know is adjacent to a mature buck bedding area. I might get in there at 9 o'clock in the morning, knowing that it's going to warm up at 9, 10, 11. He's going to start moving and feeding in the middle of the day to conserve energy and really not move much between that early morning time frame. We see that up north a lot here, where deer are bedded down at daybreak because that's when it's minus 17. They're just not moving because they know if they're moving around, they're burning a lot of energy to do so. They're a lot smarter and efficient than that. They're going to wait till it's 10, 11 o'clock and that temperature warms up to 17 degrees instead of minus 17. And they're going to feed so they can burn less energy while they're doing so. So a lot of opportunity this time of year, especially because food. They're slaves to that food this time of year. There's a lot of food sources in the summertime, early October, middle October, but those food sources are shrinking, and the availability and diversity of food is shrinking. And think about this. Think about all the food sources that have been overpressured. Hopefully not your food plots, but your neighbor's food plots, ag fields. A lot of corn is picked. We have a lot of fields around here that are manured and plowed already. Winter wheat's planted. Wheat hasn't even come up yet. And so we have a lot of property around here that used to have food during the summertime, bountiful amounts of it. All our alfalfa around here is frosted out. That we don't even see them hit alfalfa hardly at all around here when it's frosted out. There's so much of it, and it's not that great of a draw. However, the food sources that are remaining are few and short supply. So really focus on that food, even during the second rut. Might even take some chances on the morning and the hunting in the second rut. But a lot of opportunity for you that want to brave the cold and get out there and enjoy a great bedding to food source movement that can be very consistent and turn really hot even when temperatures are cold for you at the end of this hunting season. Yeah, I really appreciate you watching all the way to the end. Your followers really appreciate and taking the time. I wanted to mention we have our last minute food plots you can check out at Pure Wildlife Blends. We have a lot of different seed varieties, especially our fall power greens. We have ways to establish clover this time of year, rye, a lot of different goodies. We also have our client visits. We've already started scheduling for this year, December through next August. So there's 5 of us going to client properties. Make sure you check that out. And then finally, our books and web classes. They're great Christmas presents this time of year is when they really start to sell. So really appreciate you watching. Just check out Whitetail Habitat Solutions, or for this food plot seed company, purewildlifeblends.com. Thank you.